Okay, I'll turn the sound on.
Put that in the chair. I just pick it up on the TV.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Everything's on?
Yeah.
Sound, record.
Almost.
Everything's being recorded.
Go. And take two. This is Bridges Everywhere. I'm going to do a sound check real quick, and then we're going to keep going on with the questions.
Okay.
We're talking to Dee and Reed. They're both turning 90 this year, and I'm going to be in my 60s this year, and I just thought it'd be fun to talk to them about what it's like turning 90 and some of the things they've gone through, like some of the tech that they've seen, some of the most pivotal moments, whether it was the moon landing or what it was like back in high school, because they didn't have computers back then, and they had to do everything by hand. And so let's start there. What classes did you guys take like in high school?
I took a secretarial course.
Yeah.
So it was typing and shorthand and bookkeeping and all that other stuff that goes with it, because everything had to be done by hand and pencil.
Right.
Pencil and paper. We didn't have anything else. So,
Yeah, you didn't have phones. You didn't have
but
like
we did
calculators,
have
right?
a hand typewriter that had to be punched by, you know. by
Only
your-
actually you did it like that instead of like that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Reed, we were talking about electric typewriter. We had one that you had to punch the keys up and down like that. You didn't take the typing.
I took typing from Miss Burroughs.
Nice. Excellent. Cool. Excellent. So when you guys were growing up, let's see, where do I want to go here? And once again, I'll be editing this out, so I might start with the question again. Let's see. So we were talking about what subjects you studied in school, and then what I found interesting is when you guys were in high school, that was right after the war. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I believe you said that one of the things you did was you went around and you, back then, I think here in Florida, you had to have your lights, tops your
Oh,
headlights.
that was
No,
during the
that
war.
was
Oh, that's
during
during
the war.
Okay, I have my time.
Yeah,
So let's talk about
that's,
that.
That's 1943 to 45.
Okay. And so what was it like back then when, I think you said something about you could see them bombing off the coast of Florida?
Yeah, I had relatives living in Fort Pierce and Vero Beach and Fort Lauderdale, and we would go down to visit them. And thinking about it now, it really we shouldn't have done it, but we could sit on the beach at night and watch ships blow up out in the Atlantic just offshore.
Just blow up.
Yeah, well, apparently it were submarines, of course, that were torpedoing them. And they used to have, on all of the beaches, they had Coast Guard men that patrol the beaches to keep the Germans or whomever it was from invading us or sneaking
Holy crap.
people ashore or something.
It's hard to believe that was right off the coast of Florida.
Oh, and then that the Gulf of Mexico was about the same way. It wasn't near as bad as off the coast in the Atlantic, but we had a number of torpedoings all the way from Jacksonville to past Miami.
Holy crap. You remember most of this going
Yes.
on down there? Yeah, wow.
That's why we had to stay in our house when the air raid warden
Yeah.
cranked up the air raids.
That's
And
right.
once that started whirling around, you had to pull down. We had black shades. We had to pull down, turn off all the lights, and our headlights on our car, the half top of it, were painted black, so you could just see the road if you had to drive your car.
And what was the reason for painting the top half the headlights
So they
black?
couldn't identify us from flying over us.
Ah, okay. That's
And I
crazy.
was a junior air raid warden.
Really?
Yeah, they issued me a little pith helmet and a.
You said pith, not piss, right?
Yeah, a little helmet.
P-I-T-H.
If you know what a pith helmet is, well, it's kind of like flat with a round,
Yeah.
it's metal, right?
No, this
No.
was just a.
Just a hat, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyhow, and an armband
Right.
that said air raid warden and a little flashlight.
Wow.
And we would walk around at night in the early evening,
Right.
right after dark, and make sure that everyone had either their blackout curtains down or their lights were out or something like that. and the people were very good about it. I mean, they were
Yeah.
nice. You
Had
could
to
do
be.
that because we were frightened.
Oh, God, I can imagine.
And,
Yeah.
Everybody
but
was, yeah.
even though it was in Tampa, pretty far away from everything that was happening, but we never knew.
You never knew.
No.
Yeah. And you didn't have cell phones back then, so the air raid warning was.
We
the way
didn't
for you
have
to know,
telephones,
right? Didn't have
man.
telephones back then, so you could even call somebody and say, "Hey, guess what? Something's coming overhead." So wow,
No,
that's crazy.
the only telephone we had was the old-fashioned kind.
Yeah. And what was your first phone experience?
That was my grandmother's telephone.
Okay.
She had this, must be 2 foot tall box, and it had a receiver on one end, and I had a receiver on the left side, and on the right side you cranked the handle 3 times, and the operator came on, said, "May I help you?" And you give a number you wanted to call, which was only 4 digits,
Mhm.
like it was 765 or 937.
So no 9-digit phone
No.
number.
Four, or sometimes it would be M365 or something like that.
Wow.
But that was it, just four digits.
Wow.
1 letter and a digit. 4 digits.
And I know we were talking about first jobs, but you guys also did things in high school, maybe second, third jobs. But I found it fascinating that you were actually a mermaid for Weeki Wachee Springs.
Just during the summertime, we were learning some lessons from the regular swimmers, and there were about 5 of us from Hillsborough High School that went on a bus, and we all wanted to learn to become mermaids, but I wasn't able to have any personal transportation, so I couldn't become one permanently, but 3 of the other girls became
Mhm.
mermaids. So, but I did get to experience it. One summertime up there and having a wonderful time, and swimming underwater and doing all the acrobats that we do, and a little bit of synchronized swimming, and it was beautiful.
And what were you doing while she was like at that time frame when she was a mermaid? Did you know her at that time?
I knew her,
Okay.
not closely,
Right.
but we grew up together. We went to junior high and high school together, and
Oh,
lived in the same adjacent neighborhoods.
Nice.
Yeah, so we knew each other.
So while she was being a mermaid, were you doing anything at that time?
Working, I worked all the way through school, both junior high and high school,
Wow.
and then went on the way to college. That was it.
Wow. Oh, college. Actually, I never asked you what your major was.
Electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering.
Never worked at it.
Wow. You never worked at it,
Mm.
but you got a degree in it?
Yeah.
To this day, you have a degree in. Wow.
Yeah.
And where did you graduate from?
University of Florida.
Wow.
Go Gators!
Go Gators. Speaking of which, big Gators fan, I believe, for sports team, you're a Bucks person?
Yes, yeah.
Football, yes.
Yeah.
Bucks
Bucks.
football.
Any other teams that you guys follow, like football? I mean, besides the football, like baseball or,
Yeah.
or
We're pretty much football team, but
Yeah.
Reed likes a lot of these college ones, like
Yeah.
the Central Florida College, where his boys graduated from.
nice.
And he graduated from the University of Tampa. So, I mean, I graduated from the University of Tampa. He went to the University of Florida.
Nice. Now I remember also, I know that my mom was a deputy sheriff for a while, and I found
20
that-
years.
20 years, and that was just amazing. I think you also possibly qualified as like the first FBI person in the state of Florida to pass a course or something.
First female deputy sheriff
First female
to
deputy
go out
sheriff
on the road
to go out on the road. Wow,
in the state of Florida.
wow, that's phenomenal. That's incredible.
And deputy sheriffs only drive alone. We never have a partner.
Wow.
So if you need help, you rely on yourself, or if someone's available, they'll cover it, and if not, you're on your own.
So I know we were talking earlier, like one of my favorite movies that really inspired me was Star Wars. And when that came out, I just kind of saw things in a different light. And were there any movies that really stuck out to you during that time frame? Or do you remember some of the first movies that really, because they didn't really have theaters back then,
No,
right?
but
Yeah, they did.
Gone with the Wind was the first really big movie.
Yeah.
Because most of what we saw were just serials at the local theater, and cowboy movies, and the regular serials every Saturday morning. That's the only time we could go. We could go to the movies for 10 cents.
'Cause
Well,
you-
I remember back in the 50s, in
Yeah.
the late 50s,
Yeah.
maybe early 60s. There were a couple of theaters downtown Tampa,
Tampa Theater.
and there was one, the
I remember
Palace,
Tampa
The Palace.
Theater.
the
Yeah,
Palace Theater,
yeah.
and I vividly remember, I don't know why,
Oh, you know what?
The-
We saw the Palace. I took Aunt Julie. We saw Dr. Shivago.
Dr. Shivago.
That
But-
was at the Palace Theater.
We took the kids
Right.
to see How the West Was Won because it was the first movie to come out in Taudio vision and whatever the sound and all of that.
Wow.
And even to this day, my children who are in their late 60s still use the term when something goes wrong, the term that Jimmy Stewart used when the lady lured him into the cave and then pushed him into the water. He says, the kids would say, well, I've been to see the bear. And that was the phrase that I just thought of that, yeah.
That's great. That's amazing. And I thought it was funny too because when we were talking about movies, and what was the last movie that you've currently seen in a theater? It's been a while since you've been to a theater to see a movie, right?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
been
and
at
I don't
least
even
five. It's
remember.
been at least 5 years.
And it's interesting because what he had told me, which I didn't think about, is they really don't make movies today that people in this generation are. Now I'm a little different because I still like all the Marvel movies and superheroes and things like that, but I don't know if they ever got into that type of stuff
No, they're on television.
on television.
Sure, you can watch them now. Now, my youngest son was actually a arts major
Wow.
in college, and he is a movie buff.
Wow.
He can watch the same movie over and over and over, and he loves them. That's all we talk about when we get on the phone. He talks about the movies.
Well,
he's
every
seen.
time you see a movie again, you see something
Yeah.
different that you missed the
That
first
you
time.
missed the
But
first time.
they've never appealed to me that much. A movie's a movie. It's
Yeah.
entertainment, and that's it.
Right. And then I think I remember we went to see it was Mamma Mia together.
Yes, we did. That was a beautiful movie.
That's one of the last ones I remember actually staying
Yeah.
with her. So, and like I said,
Yeah,
after a while they
beautiful
just kind of
musical.
come on TV. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's nice to go out there, but then you come home and watch movies, aren't you?
That's
Well,
right.
Anymore, the expense just to go to a movie theater.
Right.
My girlfriend and I went, and by the time we got out of there, it cost us $65 for the ticket, and then a box of popcorn and a drink, and that was $65. So we said, "That's through. We're through with the movie theaters."
So also another thing is growing up in Tampa, and there were a lot of things in Tampa. So this podcast may say a lot of stuff about Tampa, but I remember hearing that there was like a racetrack, and when we were talking about first cars, I think you had talked about Model A,
Model A's and Model T's.
Model A's and Model T's, and those were the first cars, and I just thought that was really fascinating. Let's see. So here's one. I know we're talking about cell phones, and you know they didn't have cell phones when they were growing up. So if you wanted somebody like, "Hey, how are you?" But now you have cell phones, and I'll never forget because I want to ask them about this too. It was about texting, and I remember when texting first came up. For me, it was like trying to hit the button over and over again for ABC and do that, and I was never really good at that. And then I remember when texting became more popular than actually talking to somebody on the phone, and that my mom was like, "It's so impersonal. I don't want you to do that. I'd rather just talk to somebody." But now, since she got to use it, she knows that her grandkids and everybody else are doing that. She's like a textaholic sometimes.
Well, I have to. That's the only way I can communicate with my grandchildren.
Yeah, because everything's right there on the phone. So.
Right. So.
Yeah, I do a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty impressive because you think about that you had nothing like that. You didn't even have a computer.
No, as a matter of fact, when we finally did get a dial telephone, we were on a 3-party line, and 3
Yeah.
people were on your line. And if the phone call was for you, you would get 1 ring. If it was for your neighbor, they would get 2 rings, and if it was for the third party, they would get 3 rings. And sometimes other people would eavesdrop on other people's phones
Oh, yeah.
on their
Constantly.
conversations and say, "Would you mind getting off the phone? I'll be through shortly." And it was, but you had to wait till the phone was your ring before you could answer it.
Wow.
And if you're on the phone, then if somebody says, "Oh, I'm sorry," that's to say, "I'll be off in a minute" or something
Yeah,
like
happened
that.
all the time.
Wow. So you could pretty much know what your neighbors were doing at any time.
Anytime if you went out, but you know, we were too busy doing chores because that's all we had to do. We had vegetable gardens, we had fruit trees, and my job was to go to the next door pasture. My daddy would give me a cooker sack, which is a big old bag, old-fashioned, kind of like you just call it a sackcloth, and I had to fill it up with cow patties And he said, don't pick up any soft ones. And I said, no, I promised not to do that. Then I would have to bring them home. And I'm 10 years old now, and I have to crumble all these up, break up all of these cow patties, and mix them in with the dirt around all the fruit trees.
Wow.
And I didn't like it because I thought all my friends are watching me, and I didn't want them to see me because I was embarrassed.
So I also have my cheat sheet notes over here, just in case you're wondering why I keep looking down like this. And once again, this is the first time we're doing this, so we're just trying some things out. And I do believe I wrote a couple other things down here. Some of the first television shows that I remember seeing were like Gilligan's Island and I think it said the Roadrunner cartoons. And can you remember any other TV shows?
Captain Kangaroo, you saw, used to watch
I used to watch Kangaroo because that was what kids would watch.
Who was the guy that was in the neighborhood?
Oh, Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Right.
Well, those are all kids shows.
They're all kid shows.
Yeah.
And then, but I know besides Gilligan's Island, there had to be like Leave It to Beaver.
Oh, yeah, that's Leave It to Beaver,
But-
Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone. I forgot about that one.
A
And
lot
then with some sad things we got to actually visualize, actually see on television President Kennedy's assassination. That was a horrible.
Yeah, that was interesting. Back in those days, it was interesting.
And to see Walter Cronkite, the tears running down his face, and he said, we just lost our president.
I think there were only a couple stations to watch back then too.
We had three
Three?
in Tampa. Yeah.
So it was like ABC, CBS, and NBC, right? Just three big ones.
Yeah.
And now there's got to be thousands
Oh.
of them for to choose from. It's like you can get down to distinctive. Well, I used to grow this one pot in this one plant and this one plant all the time, and you can watch an entire series about that.
Oh, but
Right
see,
now.
it's good. It's good because the kids can watch the Thanksgiving parade without having to go stand in a hot corner or sit on the street or floor.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
of course, then the people were blowing up with, what do you call them, backpacks,
Mm.
and destroyed a lot of young innocent lives. So it was better to watch it on TV. You were safer at home.
Good point. Were there any other things that sort of like influenced your life over the years? Like things that you really remember? Like for me, I remember it was going to be the first man walking on the moon, and we had gone to see a movie, and we were coming home, and they said, no, you're going to miss it, but apparently they had some delays. So we got home just in time to actually watch them take their first steps.
Right.
And to me, that seemed to be a pivotal moment where we knew there was a space race going on and we were in the lead. But was there anything in particular, like throughout the years, and you've lived some great lives, that really kind of pops out to you?
Well, after I retired from law enforcement, I treated myself to purchasing a condo on Cocoa Beach.
Nice.
And after a couple of years, the first 2 years, we had a hurricane, and we had to replace the seawall, and it was a charge of $10,000 per person because we had to buy a boulder half the size of this room. And that boulder's still there, but there's now a condominium. And anyhow, and then the third year that I had owned it, and I thought, well, I'm taking one step forward and 3 steps back. Now was assessed $5,000 for a new roof.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I don't think I'm going to turn this condo into something else because I can't afford to stay here. Because by the time I retire, I won't be able to have it paid for yet. So that was the end of that program.
And we were talking about what you paid for the price of your first car. You kind of remember that?
I remember I got my first car when I got my first official job, which was 1953, right after we graduated from high school. And I was interviewed by the vice president of Peninsula Telephone Company, which was the only telephone company we had. And his name was Carl Breuring Jr. And his secretary, I was her kind of understudy or whatever you want to call her. When she wasn't around, I did her work. And it was a very interesting job, and I made a good salary of $36 for 5 days' work.
Wow.
That was my first paycheck, $36.
How much was your first car?
Oh, my first car, that's when I could afford a first car. My mother and father put down payment on it. It was a 45 Plymouth, and then I had to make all the payments on it.
Oh my God. How much was it, like $500?
$569 or something like that.
For a car. Do you remember?
1945.
1945. Do you remember yours?
Yeah, I had one. There were three of us that bought a car when I was in the 9th grade. It was like a Model T or a Model A. I forget. The wheels fell off of it. It didn't work out too well. But then in high school, I bought. I think it was a 41, 42 Plymouth. Three of us and two of us. That's this time. Bought it together, and that lasted. Oh, I guess it lasted maybe a year, and then I just went on away to college, and then I didn't bother with the car anymore. Actually, until I went into the Army,
Oh, okay.
and when I got out of when I got married,
Right.
then I got a car. I was
Okay.
in the Army when I got married.
Well, thank you for your service. Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
well, everybody did it then. I got a car. Then I had a Ford. I had a '49 Ford.
Wow.
And it was pretty good. It lasted me about, until I got a '56 Chevrolet.
Do you remember roughly what you paid for it?
Though have no idea.
Yeah, okay.
No idea.
Wow. And then I know you were a sheriff's officer, right?
I was a deputy sheriff,
Deputy sheriff, and it was
Deputy
for Hillsborough County
yes, for 20 years.
for 20 years. Wow. What was that like?
It was interesting because I was the first woman to go out on the road in 1973.
Wow.
So it was, in our academy class, there were 45 of us, 3 women, and there were 42 men. And the men would tease us when we went to lunch, you should be home taking care of your husband and your keys and your kids and not taking a man's job away from him. And I told them that my husband was sick in bed with clinical, clinical.
That's right. Anyway, they would
Anyway,
just taunt you about it.
He was very, very ill, and I had to have a man's job to continue to work.
Yeah, but you still didn't get paid what the men did you?
No, I didn't realize till I retired that the men made $10,000 a year more than I did.
Oh my
And
God.
so many times I covered for so many of those guys so they could do things that they weren't supposed to be doing.
Wow.
And it was one of those things.
Now, I know you mentioned something about NASA. Like there was engineer Kennedy Space Center or something like that.
No, when I was in the Army,
Right. Oh, that's what
I was incredibly fortunate. At the time, of course, I didn't realize it at all. They discovered that I had an electrical background and put me in what was in the beginning of the space ordnance stuff. This was in the mid-50s.
Wow.
And after attending some schooling in New Jersey, a unit was formed and we were sent to Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. And I actually worked in the same building. My specialty was radar and the implementation of the radar with the rocket.
Wow.
And I worked in the same building and saw frequently Werner von Braun and a number of the other German scientists that were there. We went a time or two down to what was called in Florida the Banana River Project, which is now Cape Kennedy. And then they transferred us to, actually, we were housed at Fort Bliss, Texas, but we worked at White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico.
Wow.
And my wife was married then, and my wife was in the fire scheduling office.
Wow.
And what we did is we tested all of the missiles up to the Redstone.
Wow.
And we had to fire the Redstone from Cape Kennedy.
Wow.
Yeah, but the Redstones. But I do have a little anecdote about the missile stuff.
Okay.
Back in those days, there was a television show, a morning television show,
Mhm.
called the Dave Garroway Show.
Okay.
And he had a little monkey, I think it was, with his pet and all that sort of thing. Well, he was going to do a live show at White Sands, and it was with the development of a missile called the DART missile. It was an anti-tank missile that was wire guided. You guided it through a wire.
Wow.
And they were, back then, missiles were terribly unpredictable. Well, God knows what would happen. It's a wonder we didn't absolutely obliterate Juarez because we had so many blow up over Juarez in El Paso. But we set up everything for this live show of Dave Garroway. And to be safe, we set up 2 tanks for the missile to hit. and one of them, we put in something like 9 or 10 pounds of TNT, and the other one we just left right. And sure enough, the missile failed, and we had to blow it up. So on television, it looked like the missile hit it and blew it up.
Oh my God.
I always wondered after that how much other fake stuff are we doing. But those were back in the day.
And we're going to pause for a second, and we'll be right back.
Listen and edit out that about